Again, I want to thank you all for coming. This is so wonderful to see my friends here and new people. And I want to thank Wendy and Maddie, who did a wonderful job of hanging the show. You know, they just did a great job of presenting the work. You know, tonight I thought I'll talk about two things that are very different. One is to talk about my philosophy, and it's sort of encapsulated in my artist statement. And the other part of the talk is going to be more of a dialogue between you and me, asking questions and taking it wherever it wants to go. But if you haven't read my artist statement, there's copies. I made copies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it. And I had the opportunity of showing a couple of my new pieces to a group I belong to. I belong to this group called the Art and Spirit Forum. And it's a group of people that come together. They inspire one another through reading of scriptures, of artist statements, of all kinds of things that uplift your soul. And then they explore the spiritual dynamics of art. And so I belong to this group for about, I don't know, almost 3 years, every week. And so I think about it not only daily, and I try to express it in forms on a weekly basis. And this has been really helpful for me. And so my artist statement is almost sort of a outcome of lots of thinking about the nature of art. The title of the show is Embracing Paradox. And I'm going to talk a little bit about paradox in its various forms and how it affects myself, but it also affects other artists. If you're a painter and you're here, you know about paradox. I'm going to read my statement, and I did this for the group. You know, when I was in the forum, I shared with them my statement, and so someone really was very kind and said, "You better explain that." And so that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to read my statement and then sort of deconstruct it for you, so that, because I have a feeling that it needs explanation. So it's short, so bear with me. So I say, I believe it's the artist's responsibility to explore the interplay of both the inner and outer realities, the visible and the invisible, the realms of the material and that of the spirit. So this paradoxical journey has led me to adopt an outward orientation that seeks to enrich the beholder. It is the intention of my work to act more like a portal to new worlds rather than a painting that just has aesthetic virtues. I believe that the composition of the diverse elements of any art form, when mirroring the order of existence, affects the viewer's heart and spirit in dramatic ways. When successful, such a work has the potential to elevate the spirit, to be a source of comfort and tranquility for troubled souls, and to possibly stimulate reflection upon the meaning of life, or the mysteries of life, I guess I said. But when art operates in this way, it becomes what I believe to be eternal. So let's deconstruct this a little bit. So what am I talking about, these invisible and visible worlds, the material and spiritual worlds? Well, I think one advantage artists have is that they experience the interplay between these two worlds. And they use the word inspiration to speak about this, right? What the nature of inspiration, the mystery of inspiration. Where does this come from? I was listening to a talk by Paul Simon, and he said, you know, I usually build my songs up. It takes a long time to construct them. It's kind of like the way I do my paintings. But he said, but when I wrote Bridge Over Troubled Water, it came to me like, it just came to me, which was a shock to him because it usually doesn't work that way. And I think that inspiration comes from someplace. And I think it's the artist's responsibility to explore the source of that. And so I say this is and that's a form of paradox, isn't it? You have material and spiritual. It's paradoxical because they're all one thing, right? It's not two, there's not two realities, there's one reality, but there's two aspects of it. So artists need to kind of maneuver in both of those worlds. What do I mean by outward orientation? You know, this has led me to adopt an outward orientation. What does an outward orientation mean? An outward orientation kind of expresses what I believe is our purpose. As a painter, I'm concerned with both developing my inner self and my skills, but I also have a responsibility to the viewer. And this seeps out into all of our lives. You know, it's not just for the artist, it's for every human being, right? That we've been created with a twofold moral purpose. You know, one, to develop our personal lives, our material selves, our spiritual selves, our individual self. But simultaneously, and not disconnected from that, is our responsibility for others. And so when I paint, I think about others, but I also draw upon myself. So another paradox to think about is it's both kinds of things. It is the intention of my work to act more like a portal to new worlds than a painting that's just aesthetic virtues. Okay, for all those that study art out there, this is a concept with embedded art history to it, okay? Because there's different views on art, and my view is that, and by the way, we shouldn't think dichotomously about these things. It's not an either-or situation. How does art become a portal to new worlds? It has to capture some spirit to it. It has to reflect, some dynamic that's not there with just decoration, right? So really, I shouldn't get too far into this. This is a rabbit hole here, but in the 19th century, there was something called the aesthetic movement, okay? And this moved art into a place where it was just a response to art. The term art for art's sake surfaced during this time. There was people like Whistler that were, proponents of this. And then there was a whole group that fought that, right? That wanted art to be sublime, that raised the spirit of the... But art can be both. But I'm on the sublime side. And that's sort of reflected in my thoughts where I say I believe that, these compositions of diverse elements, when mirroring the order of existence, affects the heart of the viewer. What are you talking about? The order of existence, right? The natural order of things. Think about the universe, how it's constructed. Think about how everything operates in the world. It's not haphazard, even though there's changes and chances in this world. But there's a form to things. There's a reality to things. The Greeks were one. I like the Greeks because they invented this paint. By the way, I use their paint, but the Greeks had this sense that there was something ideal about art. There's some people that don't take that view, your opposite point of view. It's kind of the eye of the beholder kind of a thing. But I believe that if art is configured in a certain way, almost like fitting into a mold of reality, it has a spiritual effect on the viewer. And that's what I mean by the order of existence. Because when art operates at that level, it becomes dynamic. It affects your heart. It is operating in an uplifting way. And I try to paint in a way where my paintings have conversations with you, that they're complicated and there's depth to them. So I encourage everyone to spend some time, pick a painting that you like, and spend some time listening to it, right? And so for those that have eyes and ears to hear, art can really lift you up. And I think that is my purpose of art. I really like the viewers to be uplifted by it. And that upliftment doesn't last a day or two. That it's something that lasts a very long time. So let's see. In conclusion, is that what's different in my mind from what I try to do, I'm not trying to be didactic. I'm not trying to be political. There's no political art in this room. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm just wanting to lift their spirit and bring joy to their heart. And that's my goal. And I hope I succeeded just a little bit. And so I'll end my philosophical part of the talk and open it up for your wonderful questions that you might have. Every painting has a story to it. Everything has a story. Some paintings are inspired by scriptural verses. In order to have this kind of perspective that I've sort of accepted and generated and thought about, it doesn't come from me. I'm not that smart. But it comes from looking at spiritual scriptures and writings and the writings of others that we're able to put things together, right? And so, I've collected a lot of quotations from a lot of artists. So I'll give you an example. When I started out saying that there's these two worlds that we operate in, right? One of my favorite quotes is from André Gillet. He says that art is a collaboration between the artist and God. The less the artist, the better. So hidden light is the dark painting over there in the corner, right? You all see it? It's the darkest painting in the room. So to talk about that particular painting, I have to talk about how I start painting. And I usually start by making black and white sketches, little thumbnail sketches. And I can't help but doing that because my whole career was based on doing little sketches. And so I think, a little pen stroke, a little line in black and white, I see color, I see all kinds of things. And I'll compose paintings that way. Sometimes they follow the drawing, sometimes they don't. Usually they don't. But there's a group of artists that don't want to be constrained with any thoughts of anything. They just want it to flow. And that's how that painting started. I didn't have any idea what was going to happen or what the composition was. So that is a product of just experiencing the process of painting. And for some reason, hidden light was inappropriate. title. Sometimes I title paintings that the title has nothing to do with the painting, so it's just, but many times it does. You know, I'm a trickster that way. Possessor of Circles. In order to understand that painting, the title of that painting, I have to share a little bit about my religious background. Possessor of Circles was a name that the herald of the Baha'i faith spoke to the women that believed in him. And his purpose was to prepare, and this goes back to 1844 in Persia. So this is going back into this period of time of corruption and disarray in Persia in the middle of the 19th century. And he was preparing the way for the coming of Baha'u'llah, who is the central figure of the Baha'i faith. But to do this, he gave women a mnemonic device of 6 concentric circles with particular quotations in them, so that they would carry and think about the coming of the day of God every day. And so another term for women was the possessor of circles. He did something different with men. He gave them a 5-pointed star. And these symbols have meanings, but I won't get into it. But anyways, since he raised possessor of circles, it's an expression that comes from the Baha'i faith. Favorite painting? There are some that are more sources of learning than others, right? There's some that are, I just do them and, that's fine. But I have to admit that Zong, the farthest one over there, the very colorful one, was very instructive. It's also a painting that is totally unusual for me to do, because I don't normally reproduce or try to be inspired by somebody else's work. But that was a painting that was inspired by me experiencing a show in Boston of Turner's work. And Zong was a name of a slave ship. And there's a whole story that goes with that. And I just felt that I had to emulate that in some way. But what did I learn? What I learned was, in trying to capture the spirit that was in Turner's painting, I had to use small little paint strokes. And I realized that this process of the paint stroke was really significant for the viewer, because it symbolized the artist's hand. You could see it at work. And I believe that there's this connection between the inspiration that ends up at your fingertips, goes through your spirit, into your brain, into your nerves, and then it's manifested in action on the canvas. And the more of those little strokes that I made, the more I felt that I was presenting something for the viewer to really fall in love with and to be immersed in. And so I try to do a little bit of that. Sometimes, it doesn't really play out that way, because the smaller it is, the easier it is to do that kind of thing. But it made me think about that process. And what you also see with brushstrokes, you're going to see brushstrokes on all the paintings, right? Is that with the medium I use, with encaustic, the brushstrokes don't look like brushstrokes from any other medium, right? Because in order to make a brushstroke and have that brushstroke stick to the layer underneath it, you have to fuse it. And so you can use a torch or you can use a heat gun, but you fuse it. But when you fuse it, it softens it. It makes it almost bubbly, like, And so that process is interesting for me because it's a form of a stroke, but it's not like the stroke that I used to make when I was using oils or another medium. So this is the realm of inspiration, right? But it's also the realm of composition, of having a sense of composition. I think in my work, one of the features of my work, when you look at lots of art, I look at lots of art, but I can get pretty colorful. And color relationships and color harmonies are important. Why? Because I think of them symbolically. When a painting has diverse elements to it and are harmonious and unified, I think that's one of those things where it comes close to the order of existence, because I think unity and harmony are elements of beauty, and that's what we seek in art, is beauty. So I'm very concerned with color combinations and color relationships and color proportions. I also have these little nodules on my paintings, which are very perplexing to people. They're not nipples. They're not that. I could be accused of that. Maybe they are. No. They come from the process of painting, because with the encaustic medium, it's a sculptural medium. And so you'll see on paintings where I would scrape, right? But when you scrape, you remove a layer of wax. And so I got this piece of wax I just took off the painting, and I rub it into a ball. And then I put it back on, I stick it back on in some place. And so sometimes it's just a natural thing of doing that, and sometimes it's just me putting it all aside and then coming back and having strategically put these little points of color. And sometimes I don't want it to be colorful. I just want it to be a thing, just a shape. Because when lit from above, like in these paintings here, they're meant to be lit from above, because all that texture casts shadows. And when you cast a shadow, you're putting darkness around color. And when you put darkness around color, that color brightens, right? And so that's a feature of these things. And so when you put a little bit of protrusion coming out, it casts a shadow. And so sometimes the protrusion will be the same thing as the background. It just comes out and you can't see the difference. And sometimes it's painted with a bright color and it really stands out. It depends on what's happening. The big painting over here with the sort of clouds, yeah. See that little shape at the bottom? This kind of looks like a piece of Italian bread or something that's long, or baguette there, at the bottom, whatever that is. I had envisioned that being black and made out of metal. And when I put it down, it was awful. It was terrible. And I scraped it all off. And then I put it on a different color and back and forth. I probably spent more time painting that little oblong shape in there than I did in half the painting. Because if it doesn't work, you got to fix it, But the beauty of encaustics is that it's so versatile. If that was an oil, it would take forever to remove it, But all I do is heat that thing up and scrape it right off. It's just beautiful. Artists work in a lot of different ways, but I think what's common among most artists is this process of acting and reflecting. And most of the time, people ask about technique and how you make this and how you do that. but very few times is reflection spoken about. Reflection is almost as important as painting and the action of painting, because through reflection, and when I'm talking about reflection, it's almost analogous to meditation about the work. It opens the heart to seeing things. It opens the mind to seeing things. It helps you solve problems. And without that calm, quiet, reflective stage, it's difficult to resolve a painting. Now that happens simultaneously as you paint in imperceptible ways, because the nature of inspiration, the nature of the gift of being able to paint happens in unconscious ways. You don't, so much, I think this is so much the case that, when I come here and see the works that I've done, sometimes I ask, who did that? Because I don't remember doing it. And I don't know how I would do it again. So that aspect of it is quite mysterious. And I think that's the nature of art. There's a mystery of art. It's a mystery of how it begins. It's a mystery of how it's made. And it's a mystery of how you finish it. But it has to do with the spirit. I can think of a couple of things that I tried to get away from that time. And there's a couple of things that never left me. But let me first address what I tried to get away from. I was an arrogant artist. Students tend to be arrogant. I don't know why, but they do. And I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew what art was about. I knew what was good art and what was bad art. And it took me a good long time to shed those views. Because what I really came to understand is that my ego is my enemy. I need to try to get away from preconceived ideas. I had to get away from thinking that I was great, that I was like a good painter. Those things don't help you. I mean, they may help you if you want to promote yourself or do something like that, but I'm not really inclined to do that now. But the things that stick is that when you're at that age in life, these are your prime years. And your ideas that you form at those times will last your lifetime. And those ideas that I might have had, or those inclinations, they show up in my work to this day. I can't be specific about it, but I'll look back at something and I'll say, oh, look at that color combination. I did that back then, But even going back 20 years, I'll do something in a painting, and then I'll do it again, and I'll realize, oh my gosh, I did that 20 years ago, But I think that period of being in school is really important, and that's why I'm hopeful I can speak to some students, because if you operate and think about what you're going to do at that stage and the ideas that flow to you, the blessings that come to you at that age, you'll use them your whole life. Those are a mystical time of your life. And I was real lucky, I have to admit. My classmates were just terrific students, great companions. best years of my life. Met my wife there, I we can't complain, right? So, my time at RIT was a blessed time. There's symbology in everything, right? A garment is a symbol of your outer being, what you're wearing, You have what you are really inside, but then you have a garment that covers you up. Levi's they cover half our bodies. So I try to think symbolically, and not always before it's usually afterwards that I think about it, not before. But I think the artist is well off if they think in symbolic terms and less in literal terms. I think literal terms really hold us back. So to think abstractly, to think in terms of metaphor, those are very helpful. And I think they're even more helpful for the beholder to view things in a abstract, metaphoric way, because the dynamics of metaphor bring us closer to the spiritual realm. So it was wonderful to have you here. I really appreciate you all coming. It's a wonderful night for me. It's sort of like a family reunion for my paintings. They all come back together again. So enjoy the evening.